Well, it's time again for another episode of Getting to Know Your Indiana Neighbor, but I don't even know where to start with this. Going off course a little bit this time. You remember a couple of weeks ago, I told you that I was going to take a little break to work on a project of my own and then come back to it. And I'm right in the middle of that project, something that I thought I would enjoy, and I really am right now. As I said, I'm right in the middle of it. And the first part of it is today's subject of getting to know your Indiana neighbor. Well, as we move forward, my idea was to get to know your Indiana sportscasters, broadcasters, right? Something up my alley. So I've got a few of those lined up in the coming weeks. But Doug Bradley asked me, how would you like to interview Bobby Plump? Bobby Plump. I said, anytime, anywhere. If you don't know the name Bobby Plump, Google it. It's all over the place. But if you're a big fan of Indiana high school basketball, particularly the single class era and the movie Hoosiers, because if there was no Bobby Plump hitting that last second shot against Muncie Central in the 1954 state finals, there'd be no Hoosiers. That's what the story is based on, the Milan Miracle of 1954. So Doug and I, well, we took the road trip up to Broad Ripple and we sat down in the insurance office that is owned by Bobby Plump. We also went over to his restaurant called Plump's Last Shot to look at the memorabilia. We had a great time, and let me tell you, Bobby Plump may be 85 years old, but he can wear you out. He couldn't wear me out. We could have talked for hours. In fact, this one's an hour and a half, so pace yourself. But a little bonus at the very end, if you stay till the very end, there's three local old timers, I'll call them, because they're older than me and because they were around listening or watching to that 1954 state championship game between Milan and Muncie Central, and they leave you with their accounts of what they were doing during that very time. So that's at the very end, so make sure you stay until then. And of course, we have ties between Jack Butcher and Milan, the Goldie Lions, similar stories. So we talk about that as well in this video. So I hope you can stay with it. If not, take it in segments. Just pace yourself. But a little different version. This is getting to know your Indiana sports legend. It's Bobby Plump, and it's right now. Well, welcome to a very special edition of Getting to Know Your Neighbor Indiana Style. This is a little bit different. We're talking about sports legends, and we've got one of the all-time great sports legends. Had to make a little road trip up here to Broad Ripple, but we're with Bobby Plump. How about that? And I thought Greg Johnson was a catch, but how about this guy? Bobby Plump was kind enough to sit down with us today, and we were just at his restaurant, Bobby Plump's Last Shot. It's a must visit. All kinds of memorabilia, which you'll be looking at as we go through this video. But Bobby Plump, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you sitting down with somebody like me. And for Doug Bradley, who set this up, I thank you so much.
Well, Greg, it's a pleasure for me. I mean, it's always nice to be remembered. And Plump's Last Shot, by the way, I'll get a plug in here. The
Sure.
USA Today divided the United States into 5 separate districts and picked the #1 sandwich in each district. Plump's Last Shot, breaded tenderloin, was the #1 sandwich in this district.
Breaded tenderloin.
There you go.
It's only a 2-hour and 12-minute drive. Come on up.
That's almost exact.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. And we'll talk about your business endeavors in a little bit, but I guess the first question I want to ask you, Bobby, if that's okay if I call you Bobby.
Bobby is my official name. It is not Robert.
Okay. Oh,
It
really?
is Bobby on the birth certificate.
Okay. Very good. Accessibility to people like me. I mean, all it takes really is a phone call. And I don't imagine you've ever counted how many interviews you've done. Thousands, I would assume, something like that.
I would say it's above 10.
Yeah, it's about. Well, I tell you what I did, of course, and I knew all about the history of Bobby Plump, but when I wanted to know more, I just Googled Bobby Plump, you're going to know more than you ever wanted. You're going to know more about Bobby Plump than he knows about Bobby Plump. But if you don't know Bobby Plump, Google him, and you'll find out a lot. But why? Why do you continue 68 years later now, I guess, to enjoy sitting down and talking about this miracle of my life?
Well, it's the same thing that I told you to begin with. It's nice to be remembered.
Yeah.
You know, I came from a small town of 100 people in Pierceville. We didn't know anything except our neighbors, and we had a great time. But I enjoy it. It's fun to reminisce. Uh, we just had our class reunion, 1954 class reunion in Sunman. One of our classmates' nephews owns the railroad restaurant. I forget the last name of it in Sunman. So there are 13 out of the 30 still alive, and 7 of us showed up. So that's pretty good.
That's not bad.
And it's nice talking with them.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had a reunion every year since 1955 of our team. That's coming up this October. And we get it, the stories get a little better each year.
Oh, I bet they do. I bet they do. But you can't change yours a lot because yours is recorded back 60 some years. But
Yeah,
how many of your teammates are still with us?
Well, you could only dress 10 back then and 2 alternates.
Right.
In case somebody got sick or injured, they could play. So of the 10, 6 of us are still alive. 2 of them just died 2 years ago, and 2 alternates are alive. So 8 out of the 12 are still alive. We're still kicking.
Still kicking.
Not quite as high.
Not quite as high. Well, still kicking counts.
Yeah, 8 out of 12 isn't bad.
You know, I know you guys want to talk about the shots. You want to talk about Hoosiers. You want to talk about a lot of things. We'll get to all of those. But Bobby, I like to go back maybe to your formative years. I guess maybe around 1945 or 46 when you were 10 years old, right after the war in Pierceville, right?
Pierceville,
what was
Indiana.
what was life like in Pierceville at that time, post-war? And what aspirations, if any, did 10-year-old Bobby Plump have?
Well, I don't think we thought of aspirations at 10 years old. We thought of surviving until the next day.
Yeah.
It was different back then. Just coming out of the Depression, and you mentioned World War II, we grew our own vegetables. We had a lot right next to the B&O Railroad. I used to go to sleep by the B&O going through. Prisoners' trains, I remember them coming to Pierceville, and there was a depot there. I remember prisoners from Germany getting off, and they'd come in, we'd give them some water and things. But at 10 years old, my idea was to live to the next day and hopefully have some enjoyment. Of the 10 kids that dressed, 4 of us were from that little town of Pierceville. So my father taught school for 20 years, and from 1920 to 1940 or so, 41 actually. My mom died when she was 38. I was 5 years old. There were 5 older brothers and sisters. My one sister was 20, one brother was 18, the other one 14. My sister was 11, and the other sister was 8. So I kind of grew up. My father was my idol, and every year we would plant. We probably had 3 or 4 acres. We would plant garden, and then we had blackberries and rhubarb, and every year we dug the potatoes, stored them up in our. We had a 2-story house, 4 down and 4 up. And we had a cold room upstairs because we heated everything by coal. We didn't have any electricity.
Right.
We got electricity in 1948.
Okay.
When I graduated from high school, I didn't have a telephone. So things were a little simpler back then.
A little different, yeah.
At 10 years old, I was looking forward to going to the creek, doing a little fishing. And then Dad gave me, for Christmas, when I was in the 3rd or 4th grade, he quit teaching school because he couldn't make enough money and Mom wasn't there. So he worked at a pump factory in Lawrenceburg, which is 18 miles away, and he created pumps. Well, he built a backboard and bought a goal and a basketball and gave it to me about the fourth grade.
Okay. About 10 years old.
We hung it. We also raised 4 hogs every year, butchered them. That was our meat for the whole year. We never bought meat. During World War II, even to buy meat, you had to have a little red coupon. Margarine, you had to get margarine because butter was rationed, meat was rationed, gasoline was rationed. Uh, so life was simple. We hung the backboard at the highest point we could get it, which was our smokehouse where we kept the hogs that we butchered. And my sister would go in and cut off the mold and everything and fix the meat. And then we had the upstairs cold room where we had all the vegetables and things. So I started playing basketball there with Glenn Butt, who was our sophomore on our team, also from Pierceville. And then Roger Schroeder, his dad owned a store. And he put up a backboard on a gravel driveway, basically, and he got it up 10 feet. And we took shovels and put them on the roof and hung light bulbs. Well, we hung some tin over it and hung light bulbs so we could play at night. And his store, I used to help Roger. They had free movies for a dime outside.
Oh, outside?
And I helped him selling pop and things. That store had a post office, had a grocery store, hardware store, and television and so forth. So everything revolved around Schroeder's store. They had dances upstairs. Yeah. We put on plays, but going to the creek and fishing was a big thing for us. Yeah. Dad got 2 weeks vacation every year, and Versailles Park was only 8 miles away, and there was a cabin on Lawfrey Creek. Now it's all covered up with the lake, but well, I say a cabin. It was a one-room shack that you could see through. And for 2 weeks, we'd go down there. There'd be myself, Roger, Glenn Butts, Fred Bushing, Sonny Pilts. And for 2 weeks, all we did was fish, eat, have fun, sleep outside in a cot. We'd go inside occasionally, but it leaked. But those 2 weeks we look forward to it. I mean, we put everything on we had a neighbor, Pop Dunn, and he did the outside fireplace. We had contests as to who could eat the most eggs, and they played Penny Ante at night, the adults. No women were allowed, no girls after dark. They played Penny Ante. The boys, us, we played bottle cap ante. We used the bottle caps that they used, and that's how I learned to play poker.
Okay.
But we would play baseball during the day, and at night we played basketball. And we played against guys that were 8 years, 10 years older than us, and it was it was fun. And that store, they had there was a store, there's a 2-car garage, then there's a barn, and they had cows. Well, cows produce manure. They dump it out to the left of the goal that we put up, and if you drove that left side, you often ended up in that manure pile.
So now, the first obstacle course, yeah.
That may be bad, right?
Yeah.
They didn't guard you too closely after that.
Oh, no, I wouldn't either.
No.
I wouldn't either.
So that was our enjoyment. Fishing was a big thing.
That's fantastic. So we barely talked basketball there, but obviously there came a time where basketball was a love for you. And between 1945 and 1954, the landscape of Milan High School basketball had to change immensely as far as popularity is concerned. Am I right?
Well, the popularity was always there. You have to remember, there wasn't much to do in the 30s, 40s, and early 50s. Drive-in theater came in the late 40s, early 50s, but you made your own fun. And basketball, we played a lot of basketball. At Milan, Milan was a town of 1,100.
Mhm.
The gym seated 1,000.
Yeah.
Okay? You couldn't get tickets, even in the 40s, to go to the games. I mean, you had to know somebody to get in. Milan won the sectional in 46, I remember. And we held the sectional, though. There were 9 teams in our county. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Milan built the school. We had 6 grades on the first floor, 6 grades on the top floor, and a gymnasium. They built it in 1930, and we held the county tourney was bigger than the sectional, by the way, because nobody thought ever win the state or go to that. And so to get to the game, I remember watching the sectional that we won in 46, and the excitement, the crowds, it was just, I thought, man, if I could just get a uniform and sit on the bench, my life would be complete. And so I followed through. Every team in the county, all 9 of them, always filled the stadium, their gymnasiums. Mm-hmm. And having the county tourney and the sectional was a moneymaker. Right. That's the only way we made money. And Versailles built a bigger gym in 1950. They seated 2,000. Okay. In between that, Batesville built one that seated 1,800. But Versailles wanted all that money. So our last 2 years at Milan, we only played 4 games at home. We played at Versailles all of our home games except 4. And we sold out that 2,000-seat gymnasium every game. And I was just accustomed to crowds being around and filling the gymnasium. Mm-hmm. And of course, back then there were only 3 cheerleaders for each team. Mm-hmm. So.
Got to mention the cheerleaders, right? Always has to be a cheerleader in a basketball story.
So it was Milan and Batesville, Osgood, Versailles were the top 4 teams.
Okay. Right. As I understood it, and believe me, I realize that I'm not going to ask a question probably that you've not heard before because you've been interviewed so many times and things like that happen, right? But as I understood it, I believe it was your sophomore year, maybe 1952, your prior coach was not happy with his seniors and threw several of them off the
What happened? See, the 10 players that dressed, 2 of them were sophomores, so they weren't on our team our freshman and sophomore year. Mm-hmm. We never made the varsity our freshman year. Right. We never made the varsity our sophomore year.
Really?
No, we were playing B team. There were 7 seniors on the ball club. Herman Grinstead, Mr. Grinstead was the coach. And we lost the first game. Now, we were playing B team, and 3 of us, myself, Bob Engel, and Ron Truitt, got a dress for the varsity, but we only played, we were 20-20 players. We were in when we were 20 ahead or 20 behind.
Okay.
And
that makes sense.
So that's our sophomore year. And the second game, we lost the first game. The second game of the season, we were playing one of our county rivals, Osgood. We're down about 20 points at halftime. Mr. Grinstead comes in the dressing room, and he's shouting a little bit, and he said, "You 7 seniors, if you don't come back and get competitive in this game, I'm taking your uniforms." Now, this is the second game of the season. You don't do that in Indiana in the 50s or the 40s, anytime.
Right.
We got beat 82-44, and he draped 7 uniforms on his arm and kicked off 7 seniors.
Okay.
He brought the 2 best players back.
Well, there you go.
And moved myself and Bob Engel to the starting 5. We beat Batesville and had not defeated them since 46 in the sectional. Mm-hmm. We played them every year. And we had the best season Milan ever had going into the sectional. Mm-hmm. I'm home with the flu. They wouldn't let me get out of bed. Bob Engel had the flu, one of the starters. Ron Truett had the flu. Kenny Bergman, one of the seniors that he brought back, had the flu. And Batesville, who we defeated earlier in the season, beat us in the sectional. But all 7 of us are coming back. Everybody's excited.
Yeah.
The superintendent, a month after the season, fired Mr. Grinstead. There was a movement to fire the superintendent, Bill Franklin, by the way, and they did fire him the next year.
Oh, okay.
But here was our opportunity, as I said. They moved us up, and
well, let me ask you this then: if that hadn't happened, if that coach hadn't turned away those 5, I guess, players, as it turned out, to help the development of your group, if he hadn't done that, is it fair to say there may not have been a Milan Miracle?
oh, I think there's absolutely
may not have been a Hoosiers.
Fair, there wouldn't have been it. No.
Interesting.
We would not have. Now, after that best season, as I said, they fired Mr. Grinstead. And they hired a 24-year-old man, Marvin Wood. Graduated from Butler, brought the Hinkle system to Butler, which is an offensive system. Mr. Grinstead had an IU like Branch McCracken. You scored more points than the other team. There wasn't much fundamentals going on. So here comes this young coach in, and there was a big movement when they hired him to get Mr. Grinstead back, because Arkenberg, it wasn't a barber shop where everybody gathered. It was Arkenberg. It was a restaurant. Well, they called it a restaurant, but basically it was a hamburger joint. And the downtown coaches always went there to have coffee in the morning, and Mr. Grinstead always went down there. Marvin Wood never did go down there. They didn't like that. And Woody changed our whole system to this Hinkle system. We still ran on fast breaks and so forth, but when we couldn't get the break, we used the fundamentals of Mr. Hinkle. They didn't like that either at practice. So they started complaining, and there was a movement to get rid of Mr. Wood. He closed practice. You didn't do that in the 50s either. We won the first 3 or 4 ball games, and you couldn't find a person in Milan that criticized Marvin Wood.
Of course not. Of course not.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. And I don't know that a lot of people realize that it's not like Milan came out of nowhere. 1953, you actually went to the state finals.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. Milan had won 4 sectionals. 32, 34, 36, 46. But they had never won a game in the regional in the history of our school. They're 4 times, always defeated the first game. So as juniors, Woody, Marvin Wood's a reason. You have to have talent, or you're not going to go to the Final Four and then win it the next year. But Woody is the reason we won the state. Mr. Grinstead even told me, he said, Bob, I hated it. I didn't have a chance to coach you, but it was better for you to play with Marvin Wood than it was. Mr. Grinstead was living in Milan after he got fired, and he was coaching 2 miles away at Moores Hill. And he still went down to the hamburger joint. But anyway, Woody, we lost 4 games during the season, and going into the last, no team in the county defeated us, okay? We're going into the last game of the season, and we're playing Osgood, that county rival again, and their gym was about as big as this building here, and they had some big kids. Woody didn't want us to get hurt, so he brought us an offense, and we practiced on it for the whole week before we played them. He said, we're going to use this because I don't want you guys getting hurt going into the sectional. Here's the offense. He gave me the ball and took me to center court and said, Bob, I want you at center court. Ingo, I want you at the 10-second line out of bounds line. Kraft, 10-second line out of bounds line. Truett that corner and White that corner. Now, that is
the 4 corners.
And you thought Dean Smith at North Carolina invented that. We just kind of
It was
borrowed
Marvin
it.
Wood.
We kind of borrowed it in
Yeah.
50. By the way, I told Mr. Hinkle that same story I'm telling you, and he said in 1932, their team at Pittsburgh. I said, okay, Mr.
Oh,
Hinkle,
yeah,
I know, yeah. But it worked so well, we beat them 35 to 18.
Okay.
We used that for the next 2 years, and I'll tell that story later, but we're back as juniors here. We're going to the regional at Rushville, seats 5,000. First team we drew was Knightstown Memorial, not Knightstown High School, Knightstown Memorial, a home for orphan children.
Okay? All right.
Here we are going into the last quarter. There's about a minute and 48 seconds to go, and we're down 9 points.
Oh my goodness! No 3-point line.
Yeah, and never won a game, and all the fans I know are thinking, "Here we go again." Yeah. Woody also brought to us, in addition to that four-corner offense, a full-court trap zone and a half-court trap zone. We used that, stole the ball 3 straight times. They missed a shot. We hit a bucket. We get within 2 points, and there's like 19 seconds showing on the clock. We throw the ball in, and the timer forgot to start the clock. Fans are screaming, they're throwing things on the floor. The officials finally saw it, called time, went over to the bench. We're in the huddle, and it seemed like 10 minutes. It probably was a minute, minute and a half. At the scores table, they never took any time off the clock. With 0 showing on the clock. Ray Kraft, who was on the All-Star team with me in 54, was a substitute in 53, hit a bucket, tied the game. Go into the first overtime. At the end of the first overtime, we're tied. Back then, the second overtime, the first 2 points wins the game. You can hit a free throw, they hit a free throw, you hit a free throw, you're the winner. Okay. I hit 2 free throws. We won the first game in Milan's history in a regional. Fans came in coat and ties. 4 of them showered with us. And they're excited.
That's Indiana high school basketball. In a nutshell, in the 50s.
We had a weekly paper. Tiny Hunt was the sports editor. His car went down the road like that. He weighed 330 pounds, but it was Tiny Hunt. It said Milan steals from orphans. Basically,
so you wouldn't have gone to the state if that scorekeeper would have done his job.
Further, I gave a speech back in the 80s. At the end of I told that story. At the end of the speech, this guy came up. I'm the timer. Ernie Privet was his name. And I said, Ernie, what in the world happened? He said, well, Bob, during that timeout, somebody kicked the plug out of the clock, and we didn't know that it was undone. And that we discovered it when they came over. We plugged it back in. We didn't know how much time ran off, so we just left it like it was, according to the officials.
Oh, my. Yeah.
But that's the true story. So there's a double overtime. 53 was more like the movie than 54. In 54, by the way, as a sidelight, David Halberstrom, the Pulitzer Prize writer, called me. He's writing an article for the National Magazine in the 80s. I looked up the statistics and things, and I'll tell that later. Anyway, we had a double overtime. That night, we played Connorsville, beat them by 2. First game of the semi-state, we won in an overtime game. The finals of the semi-state, we played Shelbyville, who won the tournament in 47, and it's still a record. This isn't the record, but we beat them 43 to 21. We held them to 2 field goals for the whole game, and when David called me, he had me look up. I got boxes I haven't even opened up yet, but I found this record. They were 2 for 41 from the field.
Wow.
So
that's a rough shooting day. That's for sure.
Joe, I'll call you back. I'm in an interview. All right. Then here we are. Never won a game to region. We're in the Final Four. I mean,
Yeah.
and in the movie where they measured the goal and everything,
Yeah.
we didn't do that.
No, no.
Woody graduated from there, and we're having fun, man. We're driving our car. You get a practice Friday before the tournament on Saturday, and we've got our satchels and we're going in. And Woody took us by the floor first, and we're talking and going, and all of a sudden it just got quiet. Man, we're looking around. Bob Engel, one of our players, said, "Put a lot of hay in this place, couldn't we?" And that kind of broke the thing. And then South Bend Central beat us 17 points. But we had done something no team from Wylie had ever done.
Well, and you did even more so the next year. So let's go to March 20th, 1954, state finals at Butler Fieldhouse. To get to that championship game where Bobby Plump's historic shot was made, you had to win a game during the day back then, right? Take me through that one a little bit, the afternoon game.
Well, I'll take you through that year. We lost 2 games during the season. And what people don't realize, because the movie was so close and things, again, when David Halberstrom called me, I looked up and said, we had a 15-point winning margin when we hit Muncie Central.
I was going to ask you if there were any close calls along the way. None.
The closest anybody came to us was 8 points. All the rest of them were double-figure wins.
Even in the tournament.
Yeah, and remember that 4-corner offense? Once we got ahead of a team in a tournament game and went into the 4-corner, no team came back and got ahead of us. We never got ahead of South Bend Central in '53, and they beat us that big margin. But we used the 4-corner offense during the season, and we used it in '54 to have that 15-point winning margin. To give you an idea, the last team we beat in the semi-state was a team with a guy you may remember. His name was Oscar Robertson.
Oscar, the big old.
With Crispus added.
Yeah.
We were ahead like 5 points at halftime. We went into the 4-corner. It was like 21 maybe it was 23 to 17. We went into the 4-corner and beat them 65 to 52 using the 4-corner. Now, that was the 3rd highest score of any team in the final 16. The two scores that beat it was when Addicts beat Columbus in the afternoon game, 67 to 66. We played Gershmar in the afternoon game in '54. Gershmar was in the final game the year before and lost by 1 point to South Bend Central. So they're back again. We used the 4-corner and beat them 60 to 48.
Okay.
So against Addict, I had 28. Oscar had 22. I normally don't tell people he was only a sophomore, though. Now
he turned out okay.
So we're playing Muncie, and we're ahead of them 6 points at halftime. Maybe it was close to 23-7, whatever it was. We go into the 4-corner, and at the end of the 3rd quarter, we're down 28 to 26. No team had ever done that to us before, okay? With, 7.5 minutes to go in the 4th quarter, down 28 to 26. 15,000 fans are standing, screaming their heads off. I stood at midcourt for 4 minutes and 17 seconds.
Yeah.
And nobody moved.
Yeah.
I mean, they're doing jumping jacks.
So I got a question for you. If they came out and guarded you, what was plan B?
Well, we didn't have plan B because what happened was it wasn't decided in the huddle. It was decided, we got the ball back, and I got across the 10-second line. Ray threw it to me, I think, and I looked over at Woody, and there's Woody. He's sitting there with his legs crossed, and he's going, well, I knew that meant for me to hold the ball.
Right.
Well, they didn't do anything, and finally, we started moving. Ray Kraft hit a bucket and tied the game,
Mhm.
28-28.
Yeah.
We stole the ball. I got fouled, and I hit 2 free throws. We're up 30-28. Now, we did call timeout, or they did. And Woody said, don't shoot. He said, if you get the rebound or we steal the ball, don't shoot. They got to foul us. If we hit our free throws, we're going to win this game.
Mhm.
Well, they missed a shot or else we stole the ball. I don't remember. And Ray Kraft, who hit the tying bucket, found himself. There wasn't anybody within 5 feet of him, and he went up to lay the ball in, and the ball rolled around and came out. I've thanked him ever since.
Now, this is when? This is in the last 18 seconds?
No,
No? Okay.
no.
I didn't think so.
We're ahead 30 to 28.
Okay.
And there's like a couple of minutes to go,
Gotcha,
a minute
okay.
and a half, something
Okay.
like that. We either stole the ball or got a rebound, and Ray missed that layup. They went down and tied the score 30-30. We throw the ball in. I get across the 10-second line. There's Woody. There's 48 seconds to go. They let me stand there until 18 seconds, and we called timeout.
Right,
Now,
right.
if you follow the coach's instructions, everything turns out well, right?
Normally.
Okay. We called time in the huddle. I didn't say I'll make it, and there wasn't a decoy or any of that stuff. Woody said, "Okay, here's what we're going to do." He says, "Now," he said, "Ray, you take the ball out of bounds and throw it to Bobby, me." And he said, "Bobby, you just dribble around until there's maybe 5 or 6 seconds to go, and if you can, shoot with enough time left in case you miss it. Maybe we can tip it in." Gene White, our starting center, said, "Well, Woody, if we're going to do that, why don't we get on the left side and clear that?" Woody said, "That's a good idea. That's what we'll do." I said, "Let's go over it again." He said, "Ray, take it out and throw it to Bobby." Guess who took the ball out of bounds? I did.
Yeah, Bobby.
And he got it back to me, but when you hit the winning shot, nobody says anything about that.
A lot of noise going on, right?
Now, I want to tell you that I was probably the only true jump shooter in 1954 in the final 4 tournament games. It was just coming in. And why did I shoot a jump shot? When I was a freshman, I was sitting in the stands watching practice of the varsity, and a guy by the name of Bill Gorman, who didn't play very much, but in practice he was jumping and shooting a shot. And I'm thinking, I know I can get that off quicker than I can get a 2-hand set shot, which was still being used at that time. So I started working on it, and Mr. Grinstead saw me, and he said, "Bob, if you work on that," and he told me to go up front, go right, go left, and go on each side, come to the free throw line, and shoot your jump shot. He said, "If you work on that, you may be able to be on the varsity." Wow.
I'll work on it.
So that's how the jump shot came. Now, Ray Kraft jumped and shot, but it wasn't really truly a jump shot. But that's how the jump shot, that was Mr. Grinstead telling me, and I thought, man, I'm going to work on this thing.
Yeah, makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So in those 4+ minutes that you're out there by yourself holding the ball, a crowd in frenzy, right? I mean,
they're standing, screaming their heads off.
So your thoughts during those 4 minutes?
I'm not sure I had any.
Don't think you had any thoughts?
I never thought anything about it. Woody was sitting over there going like this.
Did you know there was going to be a timeout before a last-second shot was taken at that time?
No, we're behind 2 points there. That's not.
Okay.
That's not
Not a good
timeout
idea.
time.
Right.
This is still, the game's going on. I didn't know, what we were going to do. I just knew he told me to hold it.
Okay. So the ball goes through the hoop. Paint me a picture of the crowd, your team, after the game, on the way to Milan that night. I think we've all who know the story have heard stories, but paint that picture for me, because I just can't imagine that people who watch basketball today can relate to that.
I'm sure they can't. here's here's what the situation was. If you watch the actual game, and the IHSAA has it, you can get it from there,
Mhm.
or it's on TV. I mean, on video at the Milan Museum. And
Mhm.
remind me, I want to talk about the Milan Museum.
Milan.
But what was the question?
Well, just paint me the picture of
Oh,
what it was
when the
like.
ball went through, if you watch that final game, we went back on defense because there's 3 seconds to go yet.
That's right.
There wasn't any jumping and
Right.
all that stuff. We're
Mhm.
going back on defense, and it wasn't as sophisticated then. They didn't call timeout. They took
Mhm.
the ball out, threw it in. Leon Aguilana was 3/4 of the distance from the goal, and as he reared back like this, the buzzer went off, and then we started
Yeah.
celebrating. The fan, I don't know if the fans came on the floor. I don't remember, but
Mhm.
we were on the floor for about, I think, an hour and a half, after all the ceremonies and the presentation of awards and so forth, signing autographs, and people were coming up. And I do remember nobody who played on a championship game had ever won the Trester Award. I remember at I didn't know what the Trester Award was, by the way. And we're in the huddle, and this guy's out there talking. Psalm was his name. He was Principal at Madison, and he's talking, and somebody in the crowd says, "Give it to Plump." And he said, "That's what I'm going to do." And I went out, and it got a little medal. Uh, and
So you didn't know the significance of
no,
what that.
I had no idea.
Right.
I'd never heard of Muncie Central when we played them.
Okay.
We got Milan is 45
Yeah.
miles due west of Cincinnati.
So they
And
weren't this team that you guys were intimidated by. It was just another night at the office for you
we
guys.
had no idea.
Yeah.
Maybe some of them. I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Now, I knew about Addis because I saw them beat Batesville in the semi-state in 1951, I think it was,
Yeah.
52 maybe. And that I did know them. Gershmeyer, never heard of them until we went into the tournament. Muncie Central, now I knew Connersville because it's close, Rushville because we played the tournament there. But I had no idea of the team. We got news from Cincinnati. We didn't get. I knew we never got the Indianapolis Star. We didn't know in '53 that Connersville was rated number 5 in the state. We had no idea.
Well, it's a good thing you didn't know about Muncie Central because I know you're aware now, of course, but they had won more state championships than anybody up to that point.
They had won 4 at that time.
Well, their enrollment was
Yep.
over 1,600 people. Yours was 160.
Yep.
So 10 times. So none of that really came into play or was in the press in regards to playing the game up?
Well, it could have been in the press.
Yeah.
We didn't get the press. I delivered the Cincinnati Star and the Time Star from Cincinnati.
And they didn't cover Indianapolis?
Well, they covered it, but it wasn't like the big thing and all that.
Yeah.
We were a bunch of naive kids. Now, you ask about what happened afterwards. We stayed in Indianapolis that night. Chris Volz, being close to Cincinnati, Chris Volz had a automobile dealership in Milan and had it since 1927. And back then, you typically only had one automobile, either Buick, Pontiac, Cadillac. He had all of them. Okay. In '53, he gave us Oldsmobiles for the regional, and Buick for the semi-state, and Cadillacs for the state tournament. Same thing in '54. So we're in Indianapolis. I should tell you, before we went up to play Muncie Central, see, when you go to the state, back then, I don't know what it is now, when you go to the state tournament, you get a state policeman, and he turns on the sirens, and you get to run the red lights and go to the games and practices. We didn't have a red light in Milan. We didn't know what it. But that was a great thing. Pat Stark was our motorcycle policeman, right? Well, in '54, he requested us again. So we're driving out, and he's in the dressing. He's in all of our team pictures.
Okay.
And before we went up to the game, he said, "Fellas, if you win tonight, I'll take you downtown Indianapolis and we'll go around the circle the wrong way. He did.
True to his word?
He did.
Did he do it?
Yeah. Got in trouble.
Yeah.
But he did. He went with us all the way to Milan the next day for the celebration. Now, we had the 3 Cadillacs for our team. We're driving them, and we get to Sunman, which is 18 miles from, the caravan was 18. We didn't know this, but the caravan was 18 miles behind us. At Sunman, right outside of Sunman, Sunman's 9 miles from Milan, cars were parked along the side of the road and people were walking. And we thought, must be an accident up here or something. A good friend of mine, Tom Colmeyer, told his wife, he said, they're in this 18-mile long caravan. They're right behind us. He said, you drive, I'm going to walk. He beat her to Milan walking with her driving the 9 miles. Yeah. The state police were in Milan because the businesses were closed. They all went to the tournament. They're there to protect the town. They estimated between 30 and 40,000 people came to Milan that next day, and they came from 5 states. You know what we thought? Man, look what happens when you win a state tournament. Ain't this fun? We didn't know any different.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So we can relate a little bit in Lagodi. I'm going to tie this locally a little bit.
Yeah, had some great teams down there in Lagodi. Jack Butcher.
Well, let me ask you this before you even go there, because in 1954, of course, there was no talk about going to other classes because of teams like Milan. But I'm guessing because of that win, it was much longer before they thought even got into the head of the IHSAA. And some people said that if Lagodi in 1975 had beaten Marion, that single class basketball might still be in effect today. Now, that might be a little stretch today, but the aura of the little school beating the big school is just too good a story, isn't it?
It's what?
It's just too good a story.
Oh, yeah. It's a... There was talk of multi-class basketball in the 60s, by the way. Yeah.
But if Milan hadn't won, I'm guessing that would have been implemented in the 60s.
Well, there's a possibility of that. But in 1978 or 9, the IHSAA voted it down 15-0. But all of the people on that board were ex-coaches except 2. Those that wanted multi-class said, we lost this battle, but we will win this war. When it was voted on and implemented in 1997-98 season, there may have been 1 coach on that board.
Makes a difference.
And it was from 1956, I think they only drew like 800,000 in 54, but from 1956 to about 1990 or 91, we drew 1 million people to our state tournament. 1 million. There was no other. You could put 5 states together and not have that.
I know.
In the year before the multi-class tournament, there were still 800 and some thousand went to the tournament. The first year of the multi-class, a total attendance of 480,000, and it has not been back there since because it ruined that small town, David Goliath. Winning a game in a sectional up till 1997 was talked about more than any state championship from 19. Now, I don't want to take anything away from those that win the championship in a 4 class. That's a great accomplishment, and I'm proud of it. But the fans spoke with their feet. There's just this.
Well, I looked over at your restaurant, and you had a sheet of 1954 and every sectional, and then the winners and the regional and the semi-state and the state. Well, that was in our hometown too. We had those things. Everybody followed every sectional back then.
In your sectional area.
And
Yeah.
when the drawing, the pairings were out, the drawing,
Each family picked a winner and see
they
which one would
picked a
have
winner.
the most wins during
Yeah,
the tournament.
and not only that, but you looked ahead, at least we in Lagodi did, because we had some success, who you might meet in the semi-state.
Yeah,
So,
well,
so
we
you
did
might
not.
look at a team for us in Evansville and hope they lose, right? Something like that. And that was just such a neat thing. And of course, today it's very diluted. But I'm like you. We had a state championship. My nephew was on it. Terrific, unbelievable time.
Oh, yeah, it's a great accomplishment.
But we
Yeah.
all will agree it's not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They probably, let me tell you what the people thought of this.
Hmm.
Ray Kraft was assistant commissioner. He was the only. Bob Gardner is one of the reasons we have multi-class. I hope they never put him in the hall. He's a friend of mine, but I hope he never goes in the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame because he used that to become commissioner. Ray Kraft was going to be commissioner.
Okay.
Now, well, that's
Yeah,
enough.
yeah. Let's not get sidetracked on that because we could talk about that all day long for sure. But in tying back, you said you had knowledge of Jack Butcher. Tell me what you know about Jack Butcher and Lagodi, and maybe even Southwestern Indiana basketball, because we still think it's special. You've got your Lagodi, Bar Reeve, you got your rivals. North Davies just won a
Sure.
state, and we draw those crowds still. But Jack Butcher, of course, started it all for us. And
Oh,
tell
no.
me about your knowledge of Jack Butcher.
Well, my knowledge of Jack Butcher, of course, I had heard his name before, but I spoke at one of his banquets after they went to the state tournament. And as I told you, he told me at the time, see, Osgood's 9 miles from Milan. He said, when we got married, we stayed in Osgood and it going on that way. But anyway, uh, he won more games than anybody and just he revolutionized basketball in that area. I mean, to dominate from a school of that size in that area and go through Evansville, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
We went to Connorsville. We didn't have to face those big
Right.
schools until the semi-state. Uh, Jack just he was a great coach, came within an inch of winning it in this all-class tournament. See, people ask me, said, what do you think about the class tournament? I said, that's what we had before we went to multi-class.
Right. Right.
He almost won it.
Yeah.
Twice, didn't he?
Yeah. 1970, it was, we did come out of nowhere, unlike Milan.
Oh, absolutely.
And lost to Carmel, of course, a huge school. But
Yep.
I remember those days, so I can somewhat relate, and those of us who were in that era somewhat relate to the night that Milan had, but not totally. But we understand where the euphoria would be if we would have won that for sure.
Oh, let me tell you something that Marvin Wood did that is the reason I said he won the state. Marvin Wood, number one, he would not allow a celebration until we lost or we won it all, both years. We never celebrated at the sectional win. We never celebrated a regional win. We never celebrated a semi-state win. He said, we'll celebrate when we lose or when we win it all. And that's important because you don't get that head going up there. Well, hey, we're pretty good. Look at what these people are celebrating here. I think that's, but anyway.
And this guy's in his mid-20s.
The other reason that I say he's the reason we won, he had never played his own defense in his life. Mr. Hinkle never believed in it, wouldn't play his own. When we had never played a man-to-man in our life except pressing and trying to get ahead when we're behind. When he came to Milan, in addition to the Hinkle system and the full court and half court zone trap, he changed our system. He said, we're going to play a man-to-man. It's the best defense. We worked hard on it all during practice. The first 2 games, he found out we couldn't play that man-to-man very well. What did he do? Most coaches say it's my way or the highway. He went to Mark Combs, our 8th grade coach, and went down and said, Mark, would you come up and teach these kids his own defense? Mark said, no. And Woody said, no, why? He said, because they already know it. Woody said, I don't. Would you come up and teach me the zone defense? That's why you see Mark Combs in all of our state championship pictures. If he didn't know the answer, he went to find it instead of drilling it down your throat.
Okay. All right.
Pretty important. Now, Indiana high school basketball, Sweet 16, Final Four. Now you hear that in the NCAA, right?
Right.
They came to the Indiana High School Athletic Association and asked if Sweet 16 and Final Four was copyrighted. It wasn't.
It wasn't at the time?
That's why they could use it.
Okay.
And that is, you know, it's amazing what Indiana was at that time.
Oh, when we hit the Sweet 16, I mean, goodness, you know, you couldn't expect anything more. Then the Final Four.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
It's a
Final Four in the state, you know, all the schools.
Yeah, you know, I'm going to say this. Yeah, we were a bunch of naive kids. All this celebration, we thought that happened every place.
Well, we got pretty used to it too. And then when it stopped, is what's going on here. Right? A lot of people, what they don't know about Bobby Plump, obviously he's got the most historic shot in Indiana high school basketball history, but he was pretty darn good. He was Mr. Basketball that year. He was a two-time MVP at the University of Butler. I'm sure those were great days. Your teammate Ray Kraft went along with you, and you guys had some success. But I want to talk a little bit about after Butler, because what I didn't know and found interesting was, and keep in mind, professional basketball wasn't a big thing back then. In fact, a lot of people in LaGuardia will know that Jack Butcher was offered to sign with the Boston Celtics, but you know, it wasn't that lucrative. He had a family, he wanted to come back and coach his hometown. But you went to Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and I did not know this till I did some homework. I will say this, but the Phillips 66ers were a very prominent AAU team, and you traveled a lot. But tell me a little bit about why you made that decision, played there for 3 years, and what that experience was like.
Well, you hit the nail on the head when you said professional basketball in the NBA wasn't anything like it is today. I set single game and career scoring records at Butler and was selected to the East-West All-Star game in Madison Square Garden, 12th in the East, 12th in the West. I roomed with the number one draft choice in the NBA. Back then, they drafted by area, and Archie Dees at IU was the number one draft choice. His offer was $8,000 a year. Teachers were signing for $4,000. Okay? Abe Saperstein was calling during the time. But now, that tournament at Madison Square Garden, the AAU tournament, which I didn't know existed, was the same weekend as the East-West All-Star. I went to Mr. Hinkle and said, there's a team in Indiana, Marion K., that wants me to play with them and go to Denver the same weekend for the AAU tournament. I said, what is that? And he said, well, that's a national tournament. They go in. I said, well, what should I do? And he said, I suggest you go to New York. While I'm there, Abe Saperstein is calling. They had the college all-star Globetrotters game. 18 games. He made $100 a game. $1,800. Dad made $3,200 all year. Mr. Hinkle. You had to know Mr. Hinkle. He had fish-hooks in his pocket. He didn't spend very much. But I said, I can make $1,800. He said, Bob, I've got an appointment with you at Bartlesville, Oklahoma. When you get back with Phillips, I'd never heard of him. Didn't even know they had a team. Archie calls Branch McCracken. Branch, I can make it. He said, if you take it, they have you as a pro at whatever they offered you. He turned it down, signed with Denver in our league, and got $12,000 2 weeks before the season started. So the NBA wasn't. I had a chance to play with the Minneapolis Lakers or the St. Louis Hawks, but I would have made maybe $4,000, $4,100. I go to Bartlesville. The only people there was Omar Bud Browning, the head coach, and the assistant. Bud Browning was the head coach of Phillips 66 in 1948. there's always an Olympic playoff. And Phillips was part of a National Industrial Basketball League. You worked for the company, and then you played during the season. If you win the tournament, if you win your league, you qualify for the Olympic playoff. Bud Browning was coaching Phillips in '48. They beat the Kentucky Wonder Five with Groza and Beard. And when you win the Olympic playoff, you automatically get 5 players, and you are the representative from the United States. So Phillips 66 and 48. Peoria Caterpillars in '52, Phillips 66 and '56 were representative of, I didn't know any of this at the time. We had, the NBA back then had 8 teams. The furthest west was Minneapolis, and then St. Louis and New York. Fort Wayne had a team until '56. Syracuse, New York, Rochester, New York, Philadelphia. We had teams in New York. Cleveland was owned by George Steinbrenner. Akron Goodyear, Denver DC Truckers, Seattle Buchanan Bakers, San Francisco Investors, Wichita Vickers, which is an oil company, Peoria Caterpillars, and Phillips. We played a 48-game league schedule, and then we did, at Phillips, we did exhibition games for our jobbers throughout the United States. The State Department sent us to Mexico for 4 weeks representing the United States, teaching basketball. They sent us to the Middle East for 7 weeks. We started in Greece, went to, from Greece, we went to Jordan, drove down the valley, stayed at the Dead Sea. You've got pictures of people in the Dead Sea, hands and feet up in the air, reading the newspaper because of the salt. Went down to Jerusalem, played in Damascus, went to Italy. And so, and when I went to Phillips, instead of $4,000, I made $6,000 and got a $75 a month raise after 6 months. So the NBA just wasn't like it is today.
No.
But it was a great opportunity for me, and they had never seen me play. They had never seen a film. This is how Mr. Hinkle is respected. I shoot for 10 minutes, and Bud Browning, the head coach, says, take a shower. I'm going to tell you, I'm in that shower. Now I'm thinking, Mr. Hinkle, what have you done to me? Man, I saw $1,800 flying out of there. I hadn't seen that much in my whole life. I come out, and Bud said, we'd like to hire you. I didn't ask how much. Didn't ask what I was going to do. I said, fine. So I graduated in June, got married June 14th, went on a 2-week honeymoon, drove to Bartlesville, Oklahoma, had $25 in my pocket. But anyway, I asked Bud when we were in the Middle East, I was assistant coach to him then. I said, how in the world did you hire me? You never saw me play. He said, while you were showering, I called Lou Wilkie, who was vice president of Phillips and served on the rules committee with Mr. Hinkle. And he said, Lou, this Plump kid said, he can shoot. He's awful fast, but he's pretty small. Lou Wilkie said, if Mr. Hinkle said he could play, hire him. On his word alone.
So you became...
By the way, I hired Charlie Bowerman, who played at Wabash College from AMO. He stayed with Phillips, and Phillips used it as a recruiting tool. They had a team from 1919 on. K.S. Boots Adams was on that team, and from '38 until 2004, every CEO, he became CEO in '38. Every CEO was an ex-basketball player, and Charlie Bowerman in 2004 was one of the final 4 that was interviewed for presidency of Phillips Petroleum Company.
All right. Okay. Can we talk about Hoosiers?
Sure.
We haven't even talked about that yet. I know you have 1,000 times, but obviously, I mean, come on, it's voted maybe the top sports movie of all time, and it's based on. Well, let's just, if Bobby Plump did not hit that shot at the very end, there would be no movie Hoosiers. There's no question about that. But I heard you say one time that the only really accurate part of the movie was the last shot that was made.
The only factual thing in the movie is the last 18 seconds after the ball was thrown in. I never said any of those things in the huddle. We never played any of those teams. In fact, some of them weren't even teens.
Yeah.
And our coach was, as I said, was 26 years old when we won. Never had a technical, never raised his voice, but they made a great, great movie.
They did,
and they asked me to show them where the shot was taken from.
Right.
And I met Gene Hackman while they were filming on the other end. I went up and I said, "Mr. Hackman, my name's Bobby Plump." He get over here. He said, "This is what this." He says, "I know Bill Jordan. Bill was a junior on our team. He'd been an actor in Hollywood since '64."
I know.
And he said, I know one of your teammates, Bill Jordan.
Yeah.
And but Angelo, when he asked me about that,
Angelo Pizzo, who was the screenwriter and had the idea from Indiana, and he was also the writer for Breaking Away, of course, the very successful movie in Bloomington. But didn't mean to interrupt, but when you say Angelo, just want to make sure we know he's the man.
He's a writer and co-producer.
Right.
Grew up in Bloomington, Indiana.
Right.
David Anspaugh was the director. Grew up in Decatur, Indiana.
Yeah.
They talked about making a movie in the 60s when they were at IU together. Had no idea it was ever going to happen.
Right.
But the thought was there. And Angelo, after, by the way, it took 7 years to find somebody that would help them finance the movie. Nobody. All the big movie producers said basketball movies never succeed.
Yeah.
And
well, do you know of another one that did?
Pardon me?
I don't know of another one that
did. No, I don't either.
Yeah.
So it took him a long time, and to give, now that it's worldwide, okay, it opened in Indianapolis, and it opened the same time in Indiana, but only in limited theaters because they didn't think it was going to work.
Right.
Angelo invited our team, to come see the sneak preview before the premiere on Saturday. This is Thursday night. When it was over, he called me aside and he said, "Bob, I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, Angelo, the Indianapolis Star asked me to write an article, and then I had my pad, and I wrote 2 sentences and became so engrossed in the movie, that's all I had at the end. I had to make it up." I said, "I loved it. It was great." And he said, "Did we get the last 18 seconds right?" And I said, "You nailed it."
But you weren't watching it saying, "Well, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. You were just looking at it from a film perspective.
Oh yeah,
because it captured Indiana high school basketball.
I didn't care whether it happened or not. It didn't make any difference, you know.
Yeah.
Now, to give you an idea of the success of that movie, it took Milan and my name worldwide.
Yep.
2 years ago, I got 3 letters from kids in Paris, France, asking for my autograph. 8 months ago, a friend of mine got a call from a sports announcer in Spain, wanted to know if I'd be on his program. So this thing went worldwide, and there was a lady in Milan that started a museum called Milan54.org.
Okay.
1998, in the corner of her antique shop, she had a few items, and then she started building more and bought the barber shop and put more in there. They raised $260,000 in that little town 6 years ago, renovated the Milan State Bank building. It's handicapped accessible. There are 12 lockers now. You put on the thing and we talk to you. They show the actual movie. They show the actual game in the back room. And there were 2 students at Purdue University, 8-foot tall board, 4-foot wide. You talked about, you saw the thing of the sectional and following out. They hand wrote all 752 schools and followed them out to the state tournament. That's hanging in that museum. Is
that right?
They have had visitors from all 50 states and up to now 38 foreign countries, including Saudi Arabia, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand.
And because of the movie Hoosiers.
Movie Hoosiers took it worldwide.
So Milan 54 is the name of the museum, and milan54.org is the website.
Yep.
So check that out. I've heard of it before.
They got bobbleheads of each of our players back.
Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. There's one in my office in there.
I'll check it out. All right. So you mentioned, was it Jim Jordan?
Pardon me?
Jordan. Was it Jim Jordan or Bill Jordan? So you mentioned Bill Jordan, went on to Hollywood, and I had to check that out. So I did. I looked at his credits, and among the many, many, by the way, including a lot of TV shows. But
yeah, he was also on Broadway.
Yeah, Broadway, and Kingpin, the movie, the Bill Murray and Woody Harrelson comedy. He was in that. But I think about that, Bobby, and I think about Ray Kraft, the assistant commissioner. Think of yourself, and I think of all from little Milan in Pierceville, Indiana. It's just an amazing story from all angles.
The real success of that whole 2 years, 2.5 years, whatever it is this. Of the 10 players and the 2 alternates, 10 of the 12 of us went to college. Wouldn't be too bad today, would it?
It would be great today.
9 of the original 10 went to college, and 1 of the alternates, he ended up being vice president of Pioneer Seed, by the way, in Des Moines. He's retired now in Hilton Head. 6 of my teammates ended up coaching. That's how much effect the coaches had on us. I would have been the 7th, but I didn't want to take a pay cut when I came back here to go into coaching. But that's what I majored in. I was going to coach and teach. You notice I didn't say teach and coach.
Coach and teach.
But that impact of the 30 in our graduating class. Now, the previous 4 years, I would bet not more than 15 total in 4 years went to college. 17 of the 30 in my graduating class went to college, and that filtered all the way down to the other grade. Now, I want to say this. You don't have to go to college to be a success.
Right.
That's not why I'm saying that. But it does open more doors.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the real success of what happened in 53 and 54.
You had mentioned that, because I was going to ask if you had any thought about coaching. Obviously you had, but you wanted to make a good living. So tell the folks what you've made your living at since you got out of Phillips Petroleum and moved forward. What have you been doing?
Well, I came back here as city sales manager for Phillips, but we didn't have much presence here, and I didn't want to do that. I started selling insurance to college seniors with Fidelity Union out of Dallas, Texas, and then in '85 I went into financial planning, and I do investments and financial planning for people, and still do it today. My office and the restaurant, 1 block apart, and it's been good to me. It's just been enjoyable. I tried retiring about 20 years ago, and if you do the same thing every day, whether it's work or whether it's play, you get tired of it. We used to go to Florida for 2 months, and I'd get up in the morning and have a little breakfast, and then maybe fish, play golf, have a little lunch. Next morning, get up, have a little breakfast, fish, play golf. I can't do this. I get to meet new people every day and talk with people, make new friends, new clients. So I've been pretty fortunate.
Yeah, well, good.
Somebody up there likes me.
So someday maybe I'll fall into that routine, but I retired a year ago, and this is what I get to do.
Hey, you're still doing something that you really enjoy. You get to meet new people.
I do.
You get to
absolutely.
do all those things.
And think about your business. Obviously, you're a people person, but the business that you've elected to be in, the restaurant business, the life insurance or the insurance and the financial, you're meeting people all the time.
Yeah, I do. And all of this that you're hearing here is a learned process. I was a shy, bashful kid in high school.
Is that right?
Oh, I didn't know how to talk with people. When I was at Butler, I never went to the campus, the C Club, because I didn't know what to say to people. I was in a fraternity, and that helped me somewhat. And my experience at Butler was more important in meeting people and finding out they were just like me. I didn't know that. When I grew up in Pierceville, town of 100 on a good day, I thought, man, if you lived in Indianapolis or New York City, you had to be a hell of a lot smarter than I was. I mean, what I know? And at Butler and then later at Phillips, I finally found out that we're all alike.
Yeah.
We all exist and do and want basically the same thing. We just go about it in different manners.
Right.
But I didn't know that. That's, again, that was the important thing of 53 and 54, because it broadened my experience and I learned how to talk.
Right.
And I was asked, from the time that we won the tournament, I was asked to give speeches to high schools and their sports programs. Man, they had to be awful. I still got some of those cards that I had in there, but I probably was given anywhere from 10, 15 speeches a year for the first 20, 30 years after I retired. So I had to learn to say something.
Yeah. You know, as we wind down our time here, we Hoosiers know what we will remember Bobby Plump for, and that's that last shot. But how would Bobby Plump like to be remembered?
Just like you said, I'd like to be remembered. Number one, it was a little upsetting because of my experience before being exposed to all these people. When I graduated from high school, I didn't have a telephone. When they called to tell me I was Mr. Basketball, they had to call Schroeder's store. He had to come get me, and I had to call him back collect to find out I was Mr. Basketball. I'd like to be remembered as somebody that still understands and likes people, and just like a normal person that has been extremely fortunate to have the experiences that I have had that allowed me to understand that people are just people. And a lot of people don't know that. Whether they're a CEO of a company, whether they're a regular employee, they're all the same. The wants, desires, and likes, as I say, they just express it in a different way. And that's how I'd like to be remembered. Just common person that enjoys people.
Well, I can't imagine why you would allow me to come up and take your time and do something like this, but I sure do thank you. And before I do thank him again, you're an author too, right? There are countless books, by the way, obviously countless books about Bobby Plump and the miracle shot and the Milan Indians, the miracle of Milan.
Yeah,
but
it's
you're an
actually
author as
an
well.
update of a book that was published in 1998, Bobby Plump, Last of the Small Town Heroes, and it should, that fellow that was calling 2 times in there, he was just up at the printers, and so it should be coming out here in the next week or so.
But so what's an update? When you say it's an update of a publishing, there's nothing new that happened between now and 1954, but was there anything that you added to the book, or it's just time to put it back out there?
It's just some things that happened during my life from 1998 till now.
Just an update,
like
right?
A year ago, Graham Honecker at Butler University, who was a chief fundraiser, they established at Butler a scholarship for one athlete per year in my name at Butler University. That's happened since then.
Okay.
So things there are things that it's not a big update. Most of it's still the same. The stories about Milan doesn't change.
Well, they might change at your reunions a little bit, right? But not in print and official.
Yeah.
Mr. Plump, thank you so much.
Hey, Thank you. I appreciate you calling and having an opportunity to talk to
Well,
me.
I thank Doug Bradley again. Doug actually, Doug got a hold of Mr. Plump, Bobby Plump, I guess, if you will, uh, for a charitable organization. And I know that you've done so
Yeah.
much over the years for charity, and he didn't wince when we asked him if we could come up and invade his day, and we thank him so much. So how about that? How about Bobby Plump? This is Bobby Plump. Thank you for watching. This is a
Thank you all. Have a great time.
very special edition. It's Indiana Legends, getting to know your Indiana neighbor. Thank you so much.
My name is Jim Bateman, and I was in the class of 1957. And what I remember about the Milan and Muncie game in 1954 was, well, in '54, I was on the basketball team, and I was a regular basketball junkie. And so when the game come on, I went to my friend's house. I'm not sure if we didn't have a television at that time, or maybe I just wanted to go watch the game with them. But anyway, I went to a friend's house, and I just remember the elation we had when they won. I don't remember a whole lot about the game itself, but at that time it was a big, big deal. And a little school like Milan had 160 some students or so, and Muncie had just dominated basketball for a long time. And so, yeah, so there was a lot of hooping and hollering going on when they won.
Hi, my name is Jim Perry. I was in the St. John's class of 57, and on that great day in 1954, I was out with my red portable radio up at by the church, St. John's, and there was a goal in the backboard and goal on the side of a garage there. And I thought, well, on those days, we went and shot around about any time we could find a goal somewhere. And I was the only one there, but I had my radio, and all during that game, I just shot around. And of course, when the great plays were made, I duplicated that in my own mind. And in my own mind, I never missed a shot. And it was a very exciting time in my life because basketball was my favorite sport. Uh, Bobby Plump hit that last shot to win that game. Uh, it was just a thrilling moment, and gave us the idea that us small town boys could compete maybe with the big town guys. And they did it and won, and it was a day I'll never forget.
Yeah, my name's Skip Ackerman. I graduated in St. John's High School in 1959, and I'm here to talk to Greg about the Milan Miracle. It was quite a big thing when I was a young kid. We went up, we didn't have a TV at our house, so we went up to my grandmother's, which is 2 houses up, watched it on TV. You really couldn't distinguish one team from the other. It was just more fuzzy pictures of things that you could see players running around, but you couldn't tell who was in the white uniform, who was in the black uniform. But it was quite a thing. A little town like Milan, which we consider to be a little town like Lagodi, could go all the way up there and do something like that. And I think everybody in Lagodi was a Milan fan.